Community Transport Association is a UK-wide organisation. We've got 3 members of staff in Wales, and I'm the North Wales officer. What is community transport? It's a response to the transport needs of individuals and groups which are not met by other conventional modes of transport. So it's very much about trying to fill gaps which are left by conventional transport. And you can need it for reasons of age, disability, location, low income, and unsuitable or unreliable public transport. And that's where we're coming from today. So when you've got an organisation, when you've got a community which suddenly loses its transport, how do you go about working out how to correct that, how to fill the gaps, how to make sure that vulnerable people, and even those who aren't so vulnerable, have access to all the services they require? And these are the sorts of things you can use. Unfortunately, we haven't got a local community focus group at the moment. But it's also, you look at things like the index of multiple deprivation, the geographic information service data, the labour market. You bring to bear all the resource elements you possibly can from as wide a sphere of people as you can to make a co-productive solution. What sorts of transport are we thinking about? And what for? Well, the government at the moment is talking very much about getting people to education and employment to get people out of poverty. I find that quite a restricted look, because people need to get to healthcare, they need to get to social care appointments, but they also, as we've heard, need to get out of isolation. They need to be part of their community, they need to be able to access leisure facilities, social facilities. But when we're trying to plan what sort of solutions we can come up with, there are things that we need to take into account. There is a North Wales Regional Transport Consortium, known as TIThe, which has just, well, the consultation has ended. It ended at the beginning of October, but you can still input into that, on an integrated bus and community transport network. They really want integrated transport across the whole of North Wales. So how do you get to there? Budgets, transport budgets are being cut year on year. This year, the transport budget was cut by 25% across all buses and trains and everything else. With local authority budgets being cut, education transport, transport for social services drop-ins, all of those are under threat. There are political drivers. As I said, the Regional Transport Association. Welsh Government have just started an integrated group called Transport to Health, which includes the local health board, the local authorities, the Regional Transport Consortium, the Welsh Ambulance Service, because they've realised that with the reorganisation of healthcare services, actually getting to appointments can be very problematic. But there are legal considerations as well for community transports. They are very definitely not for profit. At the moment, in order to be able to charge to take people anywhere, they have to operate under either a Section 19 or a Section 22 permit. Otherwise, they would be considered public service vehicles with a whole host of other regulations. And because over 80% of the work that community transport operators in North Wales do at the moment is taking people from, to and between healthcare services, which is a regulated activity, all the drivers must be disclosure and bartering service checked to the highest level that they can be. A lot of our community transport members also do schools transport. So again, for vulnerable adults, for the elderly, for the disabled, and for children and young people, they are checked to the highest level possible. There is one very good example of a problem that is ongoing at the moment, and I've been allowed to use it and share it with you. Llanderfel, rural community in Gwynedd. After 30 years of having a bus going into the village, the commercial bus company decided to move the bus stop out of the village to half a mile up a hill. Great. There is nowhere that a shelter can be put to protect people from the weather. And if you are 80 and slightly infirm and you've just been shopping, how do you either get up or down the hill carrying your shopping? The reason quoted for not keeping the bus stop in the village was the bus had to execute a potentially dangerous manoeuvre. As I say, they've been doing it for 30 years. They also have changed the timetable, which means that people who used that service to access education and employment now can't meet their connection because the bus arrives 5 minutes after the connecting bus has left, whereas before it used to get there 5 minutes before the connecting bus. So, there are ongoing negotiations, and a tender process will be put in place to try and replace the bus service because it was part of a Trans-Cymru route, which the bus company has also said that they wish to terminate in January. Welsh Government have stepped in to make sure that that bus route continues until the end of June, but then there is still a problem. So what we want you to do is come up with solutions. What we want you to do is think, if this was your village, how would you cope with losing a bus service? How would you try and work out what you could put in place? Because we need to know, because the chances are that if the transport budgets are cut again next year, and there is ongoing discussion at the moment about the concessionary bus pass, which Welsh Government still wants to be free for everybody who uses it, but the reimbursement costs are going to be potentially halved. So some commercial bus operators in Wales are already threatening to move out of Wales because over 40% of all journeys undertaken are on a concessionary bus pass. We've got a problem and we need help to solve it. So, what I will do is I will pass round copies of the story, and it is an actual story, and a copy of the demographics of the village, so you have some sort of idea of people who potentially might be able to help and those who definitely can't. Good luck. So think about your own village, your own town, the sort of people who use public transport now, their ages, their abilities, or otherwise, and give yourself a ballpark figure. What we want are solutions of how a community, and the only reason you've got Llanderfel as an example is because it is ongoing at the moment. Be a bit creative in your thinking. And don't forget that a lot of organisations have specially adapted vehicles for people with disabilities. And if a lot of the commercial users, a lot of public service transport now has low-rise buses in order for people with wheelchairs to be able to travel more successfully. If you lose those, how do you replace that in your village or your town or your city?